Welcome, everybody. I want to thank you for signing up for our first Tier 2 workshop training. This training is geared toward the SE supervisors or the designated trainer that you guys have for your agency. So let's go ahead and get started with this training. The title of this training is How to Facilitate Those Transition Meetings. The training goal for this training is to help teams know how to facilitate successful transition meetings so that people have a good quality care when they are moving. The first part we're going to cover in this training is how to schedule those transition calls. Step one in this process is once the individual has chosen their provider, they've completed those meet and greets, they've met with the housemate, they've chosen their housemate, and they have discussed a move-in date, the SC will then need to work on getting that transition call scheduled. We recommend the transition calls be scheduled at least 2 weeks prior to the move-in time to allow enough planning time for the team. Step two in this process, the sending SC will then need to schedule the call and they will need to invite all the required team members. Those required team members are the sending and receiving SC and the SC supervisor, the current provider, if they're already living in a residential setting, the new provider, the guardian or their supported decision maker, and the individual. Now, keep in mind that the guardian or the supported decision maker can be a team of people, not just one person. Step three in this process, the sending SC will send an email out to the entire team requesting a transition call. We would suggest that you provide at least 3 to 5 available dates and times. Some of the demographic information you might want to include in the email is the individual's name, their DMH ID, a brief history, the reason for this transition call, the most current ISP, and then any additional supporting documentation that you think the team might find helpful to have. Step 4 in this process, once a date has been confirmed for the transition call, the sending SC will then send out the invite using one of these virtual meeting platforms. And here's just a few examples. You can use WebEx, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, or just some basic conference calls. Prior to the transition call, the sending SC will then need to complete the checklist to the best of their ability before that call is held. And the SC will need to email out that checklist to the team at least 24 to 48 hours before that call. The SC will need to complete the demographics at the top of that checklist. They will need to complete sections A, B, and C. And again, make sure that you get this checklist sent out at least 24 to 48 hours before the call is held. The next part in this training is how to facilitate the transition call. Step 1 in this process, it is recommended that the facilitator of the meeting, whether that's the SC or the SC supervisor, to log into the meeting at least 5 to 7 minutes prior. We ask of this because this will allow you enough time to make sure that the sound is working. You'll want to have your checklist handy and ready to go. And then this will allow for you to take attendance and keep log of that as team members log on to the call. Step 2 in this process, after everyone's on the call, Have each team member introduce themselves and state which agency they are with. Keep in mind that if not all the required team members join the meeting, the SC may need to try to get this transition call rescheduled because all required team members do need to be part of this transition. Step 3, after all the introductions are done, the sending SC will provide the team with a brief history update to the team and give the reason why the individual's having this transition. Step 4, the SC will need to go through sections A, B, and C on the checklist. Even if some of the lines are non-applicable, please still try to discuss those items on the meeting. There may be some information that some other team members might have that they want to provide. The next thing you'll need to do after those sections are complete, the team will need to discuss or verify the move-in date for that person. And we will continue on with the next slide for more details on that. Step 4 continued. Just keep in mind that with the move-in date, there must be UR approval before the individual can move. Sometimes while on the call, after discussion of services, team may decide that more services are needed, which could actually push back that move-in date. So it's really important that all the UR is approved prior to them moving in. Step number 5 in this process, we encourage our individuals to attend their transition calls if they're able to. We encourage them to be part of their decision-making process as well. The SC will need to briefly go over section D on the checklist for an update of next steps that might need to be done before the next call. Step number 6 in this process, we recommend that the SC tries to schedule the post-move call during that transition call while you have all team members present. The only thing with this is you won't need to have the sending provider on the post-move call. And the post-move call will need to be scheduled within 15 to 30 days after the individual moves. No sooner than the 15 days and recommended no later than 30 days. Following the transition call, after the call, the SC will need to refer to the transfer contact brochure, which we have on our website, and send out an email to both the sending and receiving parties. In that email, you will want to include some of this demographic information, the individual's name, the individual's DMH ID, the move-in date or the tentative move-in date, the date of the transition call, date of the post-move call if you have that scheduled, the sending receiving TCM, and then the sending and receiving RO. And then keep in mind that the receiving SC will need to request an EOC be open if they're moving to another regional office. The next part in this training, we will go over the post-move transition call. Step 1 in this process, again, with the facilitator, we recommend that the facilitator, whether that's the SC or the SC supervisor, one of them or both of them, log into the meeting about 5 to 7 minutes prior. You'll want to conduct that sound check to make sure the sound is working, and you'll want to have your checklist available and ready to go. And This will also allow you some time to do the attendance as team members log in. Step number 2 in this process, again, after everyone is on the call, have each team member introduce themselves and state which agency they're with. If not everybody joins the meeting, like all the required team members, the meeting may need to be rescheduled. Step 3 in this process, the sending SC may want to ask the individual if they want to provide an update to the team. If not, the provider or another team member that's close with the individual can provide this update to the team. Step number 4, the sending SC will do a follow-up on any items on the checklist that was done on the transition call. That's in section A, B, and C. After all the follow-up is done in those 3 sections, the SC will proceed to section D on the checklist. Step 5 in this process, the sending SC will ensure that all supports are in place and authorizations have been approved, and these are in CMOR. Any pending UR approval will delay the transfer process if a transfer is going to occur. So keep that in mind, that all UR needs to be approved. Otherwise, that transfer date that's been discussed won't be done on that date. Step 6 in this process, the team may discuss a transfer date if a transfer is to occur with this transition. If not, then you can go ahead and proceed to the next slide. Following the post-move call, the SC will need to complete the checklist with all signatures. The SC will need to email out the checklist to the team within 24 to 48 hours after the post-move call. Again, the SC will need to refer back to the transfer contact brochure that's on our website. The SC will need to include both sending and receiving parties. The receiving team will review the email, accept the transfer, and provide that acceptance date. Then the CIC, which is the Consumer Information Center staff, will then close out any open EOCs. The transition process is now complete. The send-in team will then end their roles and authorizations in CMOR. The receiving team will request to begin their roles and open up an EOC. Just take note that any authorizations only need to be ended if the person is moving to another regional office. So if they're staying within that regional office, those authorizations do not need to be ended. And this completes our training for today. The next couple slides, we have here on this slide a informational. If you need any additional information, we have the transition coffee and chat held monthly, which is held on the second Tuesday of every month at 9 a.m. We also have the Tier 2 workshop series, which this is part of. And then we also offer some mentoring and coaching. Some resources for you guys. The DMHDD website. Here's a link to that, our main website. And then here is a link to the community transition website. Here you can find any information related to transitions, transfers, meetings, and where to locate all of our forms. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing everyone at our next workshop.